What is going on, everybody? This is Brandon from ComixKings. Welcome everybody back to the show. Welcome everybody back to another episode of Creators Corner, which is my favorite show on the channel. Sorry to all my other co-hosts. But today we have something very special for you guys. The writer of Iron Man in the Bronze Age, co-creator of Scotland Ant-Man, co-creator of War Machine, co-creator of Huntress, Valiant Comics, so many characters. Let's all welcome Bob Layton to the show. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing, sir?
My screen is frozen. My screen is frozen. No, I'm just kidding. I'm great, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. You know, it's a nice sunny day here in Maryland. I know it's not the same for you over there.
We have just for the viewers that are watching, there is a severe thunderstorm warning here in Tampa. So the lights may go out at any moment, or if you hear a loud boom, I am not in a war zone. All right, just so you know. But we have a contingency plan in case that happens.
Yeah,
but
so
it's that time of year. It rains every afternoon here, but right now there's a severe storm going on. So I apologize if there's any background noises.
Oh, you are all good. And just a reminder to everybody catching the live show, make sure you guys take a second, hit that thumbs up button. And if you guys are catching the replay, also make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you are not already. Thank you for everybody. See a lot of new people in the chat already. If you guys do have a question for Bob, you can ask it here today, and we will weave it in organically into the show at some point. Okay, so
we'll ignore it.
Or we'll ignore it. If I don't like the question, I won't answer it. That's just how I do things. So make sure your questions are good enough for me to ask.
The esoteric ones, you know?
Yeah, I mean, some of them is like, what? Someone's like, I would have never thought of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. You know, obviously the background is something that I would really like to work on. But Bob, first question for you is, what actually got you into this medium, and what got you into the comic book industry?
I learned to read from comic books at a very early age. My sister, my darling sister Sue, it was a Jack Kirby comic, and Jack Kirby and Wally Wood Challenges the Unknown. And I could tell what was happening because the storytelling was so good. So I could figure out what the story was. I was like 4 years old. But, you know, I used to, like whine and have her read it to me. And eventually she just taught me how to read. And the medium was so powerful that I learned to read off of that. You know, I skipped a grade of school because of, the fact that I was reading proficiently by the time I started kindergarten. Which is also kind of a bitch too, because I graduated at 17. You can't get a real job. They put the hook in me, and what's really ironic about the whole thing is, so the first comic I ever read that I remember was a Wally Wood comic, and then later. After high school, I wind up going to work with Wally Wood as his assistant. So it's like small world, right?
Right. It all comes full circle.
Yeah, like
Wally Wood is.
He didn't care, I mean, he was just like about that, but because to him it was just a job. But
right.
It was like I always saw some irony in that the thing that inspired me to want to do this.
Right. But it was just like that experience of learning how to read, that's the same for a lot of people.
It convinced me that the medium was powerful enough,
Right.
Reading Dick and Jane or whatever they read now in elementary school, wasn't quite the same as Spider-Man or Captain America or something like that. Something that, interested me.
That's like a little bit more exciting,
I wasn't a big Iron Man fan, to be honest with you. I always thought the book sucked.
So that's why when you got on the book, you're like,
yes,
you know what?
exactly.
I'm going to make it 20 times better.
Because I used to make my own Iron Man comics, man, when I was like 11 years old. Like on type. In fact, the whole Doom Quest story was something I came up with when I was 11 years old. And I did it like on notebook paper. And I remember when Dave Michelai and I were having a plotting session, I told him about it. He goes, "Man, I love that." We wound up doing it, and now it's considered one of the classic stories,
Yes.
But it, so never throw anything away. Okay, that's you never throw an idea away because you never know if you can recycle it.
Right. That's why, like, whenever I like to write sometimes, whenever I have an idea for a story, I'll keep it. I have this little notepad that I always
Ooh,
like to use.
Look at all the people.
Yeah, they're going crazy. They're all talking
Hi guys.
about their
Look
books.
at all of them. Yeah, I just flipped over the comments there. It's like, wow.
Yeah, you'll see that it jumps on you from
Welcome
time
everybody.
to
Yeah.
time. I'm so excited to have everybody here. One of the reasons why I love doing this show is because I feel very powerful bringing that whole Comic-Con feeling back. And I love not only talking to the creators, but giving the chance for other people, right? Kind of having that set up as well,
And not giving them COVID. Yes.
Right. And not giving them COVID, because also like some people are East Coast, some creators only do East Coast circuits, some only do like their local region. So, yeah.
Do we have anybody internationally?
Yes, I think we do. They will be here. I think one of them we're going to see from New Zealand pop up. But my friend,
New Zealand. I've been to Auckland. Yeah. I've been everywhere. Like I told you, Brandon, in the when we were talking earlier off camera. I love Auckland. It was a beautiful place. People there are so nice. You're suspicious of them.
Boom. And this is my friend Chad. He said that he does a lot of comic blocks, kind of similar to the one I have back here. He just did a Demon in the Bottle block, and I have a picture of it, and I was going to show it to you, but I completely slipped my mind. But I will do that after the show. It was really good. He does some really great work. But speaking of Iron Man, I never really thought of him very interesting, until Demon in a Bottle, until like you really put Tony Stark outside of like the costume, the armor, and really just dove into him. So you said you wrote that story a while ago. How did that like kind of go about with everything? Well, you said you drew it from outside sources off screen. So I'm really curious
the point of it is when Dave and I went over to Marvel, this is in the mid 70s or so, like I think 78, 77, 78. It's like David was a DC guy. He was never really much of a Marvel guy, which I think really helped. He went from my impressions of what I thought Iron Man should be. And to me, as a kid, I never wanted to be Iron Man. I wanted to be Tony Stark. To me, it's like, okay, as a 15-year-old kid, let's face it, which is more appealing? Wearing a big clunky suit of armor, or being a guy with all the clothes, all the toys, all the money,
all the women.
Yep. That seemed like an aspiring thing. I mean, I just figured Tony Stark should be a rock star. Wherever he walks in, people should just go nuts, right? And just like in typical Marvel tropes or comic tropes, Tony Stark was just a means to an end to get him in the suit, so he can fight bad guys, like dumb bad guys too, by the way. Animal Man, there was Kitty Man and Gorilla Man, and I don't know if Frog Man or something like that. I mean, when we went over the book, there was like this ridiculous array of like dumb villains, which we actually took and incorporated into the whole Justin Hammer story to explain where they were coming from.
Just everything is Justin Hammer.
That was it was one of those things where Dave kind of went off my impressions of what I thought it should be, and to me, the emphasis should always be on Tony Stark. To me, Tony Stark was King Arthur. He was. I grew up, with the Arthurian legends and reading that stuff and Knights in Armor. You go figure, right? That was something that attracted me. And to me, Tony Stark was like the modern day analog to that. He was a king of his kingdoms, Stark, Enterprises, right? Stark Industries. He had the Avengers, the Knights of the Round Table that he formed, right? You go through the whole analogy, and his job wasn't out fighting crime; it was protecting his kingdom, right? And he was also a tortured king, like most are, like Arthur was, and that's why we got rid of the whole heart problems. We see the background here with Demon in a Bottle. Even by the late 70s, heart transplants were common. The heart thing just didn't seem to really work for me, because science, here's a guy who could build this suit and build an armor that can fly into space and all this kind of stuff, but he can't fix, a couple pieces of metal that's near his heart. And they always used it as an excuse. in the old comics, I used to hate it because he would be fighting Ultimo or the Mandarin or something, and he's just about to win on the last page, and he'd have heart attack and fall over, right? And they did 50, 60 times he'd have like a heart attack. The only person I ever knew that had a heart attack 50 times and lived was Dick Cheney. So it's like it didn't make any sense to me in the modern era. That was a time, too, in the late 70s when Marvel was kind of retooling their characters for a more sophisticated audience. Each generation kind of reimagines the Marvel universe to fit whatever the sensibilities. We're a mirror. Comics are a mirror to what's happening in the outside world. We don't really innovate. We assimilate whatever's going on in the world. And at the time, too, you think alcoholism and drug addiction was first time it was talked about openly was in the late 70s when Betty Ford Clinic opened. Up till about then, it was all closeted, and people thought you were just sick or something, or mentally diseased. They didn't really recognize it as a disease, but people were talking about it now. So it seemed to us that giving him a substance abuse problem would kind of go in tandem with the world we were creating, the industrial world we were creating for Tony Stark.
Right. And this whole alcoholism arc for Tony is really what we're seeing in the movies today. What was like kind of that journey, not really copying and pasting, but taking like this story and putting it onto the big screen?
Well, Downey was really upset because he loves Demon in a Bottle, and he didn't, a chance that it was way too dark for them to ever do with Iron Man, but they did do an homage to it kind of in Iron Man 2. But, in talking, when I was on the set with him, he was like, he loved that book. It was one of the attractions of the character, and I think at the time when he started, he had just been sober about 5 years, and let's face it, Downey was the poster boy for sobriety. I mean, considering his Hollywood story with substance abuse is legendary. So, the fact that he's turned his career around like this is amazing. I couldn't be more happy for him.
Right, and just like this comment says, I am sure that that whole arc, really did help out a few people, because comics really do speak to people, right, about themselves.
I'm still kind of the unofficial comic book spokesman for sobriety. I get letters. I get letters. Just recently, I got one, but I'll get letters 2 or 3 times a year from somebody who had read that book 45 years later or some whatever, and it had an impact on them,
Right.
I had substance abuse issues myself. I've been sober for 33 years. So it's like, I kind of know what it's all about. Trust me. It's amazing how that still resonates with people so long, after it was done. And at the time, it was just another story. We did it and moved on to the next story, you don't know what's going to resonate with people. You have no idea. If I did, I would be the richest guy in the world, because I would just keep creating stuff that resonated with people all the time.
Oh, there you go.
You never know what when you're doing it, what's going to stick, what's going to be something that survives the test of time. I've been very fortunate in that regard, that so many things that I did have survived. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the people out there.
Right. And obviously we wouldn't be having people here today watching you speak about this if it didn't resonate with people. This is only in the top 20 comic books of all time. So
yeah, well,
as of last year, which that is an amazing accomplishment.
I didn't vote for it.
You didn't vote for it. Yeah, you were probably like, that Chris Claremont guy? Yeah, he did some pretty cool stuff.
He did some good comics, yes.
Yeah, cool guy, right?
That Alan Moore, boy, he sure can write.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you don't vote for Alan Moore, he will find a way to figure that out. But
yeah.
In his Alan Moore ways. But what you did for Iron Man, for such like I don't want to say like a boring character, but kind of like a character that didn't have a lot to him. What you guys gave him was just fantastic, and really is why he's still relevant today, in my opinion. We
just tried to make it believable.
Right.
I think that's with any kind of fantasy, or sci-fi or anything like that. It's credibility, I mean, I started treating the armor like it actually was a machine, and that's nice. It's like Hero Trader. Let's say Hero Trader. Yeah, Fort Myers, great
There you
place.
go. There you go.
Great comic shop. Jeff Jenkins, good guy.
There you go.
It was all about making Tony credible, making his world credible, making the armor credible. I mean, it always bugged me. It never looked like metal. I mean, they used to do boots with Buccaneer cuffs on them,
Right.
It's like that just drives me nuts, because it should be shining and it should be metallic, and they never drew it like that. They rendered it like it was anything else, and boy, if I have one claim to fame is just that I started treating the armor like it was a machine.
Right, unlike what they did in Tales of Suspense, which was or Tales to
my God,
which is great.
It looks so horrible. I mean, I'm sorry. It was drawn. Great artists drew it, but it never looked like metal. And it's like, I mean, as an inker, that your job is to create textures. You create textures. And it's like one of those textures is metallic.
Right. Yeah. A metal suit. You think you should have that in there, And then, of course, during your career, you went on to write stuff like Iron Wars. How did your relationships with the other creators on the team, David Michelinie and John Romita Jr., play into what you wanted to tell in your time on the book?
Oh, well, I've always had one standard rule of thumb is like, when it stops being fun, I quit doing it, Johnny and I have stayed friends over the years. It's 46 years, it's always a blast when I see him. He's a great guy. At one point we used to live in the same building together, it's like we shared an apartment building out in Long Island. But we were close. We traveled together a lot of times and doing cons and stuff like that or whatever. And Dave and I, like I said, while I was doing Iron Man, I lived near him, so we would get together once a month. How we used to do it is we would sit down and come up with an arc, a 12-issue arc, a year's worth of stories, and we knew we wanted to get from point A to point B, and then within that arc, that's the mega, the MAGA story, right? Then we would break down the individual issues and how we're going to get to that point. I never realized until afterwards that we actually did what they do in Hollywood. We acted like showrunners in terms of creating a season, and we would create Iron Man in seasons. So you go back and look at the comics, the Iron Man comics, you'll see they're like 12-issue arcs, where, Armor Wars or Demon in a Bottle, all those kind of things were all pretty much like 12-issue arcs. That's the way we designed these things. And I just realized afterwards that we were really kind of doing the Hollywood take on how Iron Man would be done.
Well, there you go, right there. And then I know you did do a lot of work in Hollywood. What would you say is the biggest difference, or like to you personally, of being in Hollywood versus just like you're writing your comics, in Long Island working for Marvel. Of course, they're for two different things. What would you say is like the biggest kind of struggle or difficult mountain to climb between the two industries?
Besides the mountain of BS, you mean?
Sure, we'll go with that as well.
Well, I'm going to keep this PG for your viewers out there. Okay. No, that's all right. No, I have a reputation for keeping it clean. I mean, so I'm going to keep it clean through this thing. Are you talking about aesthetically or just personally?
Like personally, because everybody's different. So the same thing that
I found Hollywood to be a wonderful challenge for me because I had done everything. I went out there in 2008 to work on the Iron Man DVD for the first film, and I realized that it was just amazing. The energy and the excitement behind the Iron Man movie, and meeting the people and everything involved with it, and they were such huge fans of my work. I mean, these guys who Favreau and Downey and Kevin Feige and all these people had read the comics backwards and forwards. They knew this stuff, really well. And it was it just kind of opened my eyes that there was a bigger world out there. Um, I still think that the first Iron Man movie is still the best Marvel movie ever made, because it's so true to the spirit of what the comic was.
Right.
And I still stand behind that.
Right.
But it put the fire in me to get involved. So I actually started working freelance out there. I did design work. I went to work for Edward James Olmos and his production company, Ozpix, with his son, Michael. He ran that with his son, Michael. And Eddie was an incredible mentor to me. Like Dick Giordano and Wally Wood were mentors to me in comics. Eddie Olmos was kind of the same. He was in Hollywood. I found out the money's fantastic out there compared to doing a comic. I mean, the example I was giving you, there was one day where somebody came to me and asked me to do 5 quick little sketch designs for a film. All right. And not really, heavily laden drawings, but I'm talking about pencil sketches, right? I got 10 grand for that. I would have to do 5 full comic books, pencil and ink or whatever, to make 10 grand, and I'm just saying, wow, I'm in the wrong business, because it's like, how much work making a comic is. It's
right.
Whether 600 individual pictures or whatever, working under an incredible deadline, usually for an editor who doesn't know his ass from his elbow. So it's like, the difference is, I'm working for Ed Olmos and I'm doing design work and I'm getting paid incredible money or whatever. And I'm learning,
Right.
On a creative level, I learned the difference between, because comics and film are not the same.
Right.
And that's why people always wonder, well, why don't they do it just like the comic book? And the reason why is because it's not like a comic at all. Comics don't have the constraint of time. I can tell the creation of the Marvel Universe in 22 pages, but you can't, on film, you can't do that.
Right.
It's like, because you have to be aware of time. Also, since they move, a lot of times there's things that you do in a comic that you don't have to do in a movie, because Eddie used to go into my scripts and he would just cross this out and he says, I could do this with an expression. I can do this with a movement. I can do the, because they're actors and they know what they're doing. And it's like, so many things can be done with, and the point the word I'm getting out is nuance.
Right.
The comics don't really have room for, because you have 22 pages to tell the story as fast as you can.
Right. And in a comic book, if you're the writer, you're the artist, you're the one who's running the show. You're basically God.
Yeah,
in a film,
but I'm saying, even when we're writing a script for Hollywood, the difference is I can take 60 seconds out of the movie if my character happens to be obsessed with eating broccoli for some reason, and if it relates to the script in some way, I can nuance broccoli. Okay, that's my point. It's like, you really can't do that in a comic because you don't have the economy of space to do that. So there's a lot you learn. Plus, also in Hollywood, you make comic books for your mother. You understand what I mean? Yeah. You can't make them for you. You're making. You have to make stuff that your mother understands. It's so funny because 35 years in the business, my mother really never figured out what I did for a living till she saw the first Iron Man movie, and suddenly it all made sense to her.
So
because she could relate to that. She could relate to a comic book,
right?
But she could relate to the film. And it's like, suddenly it made sense to her what I've been doing all this time,
Right. Only 35 years later.
Thank you, Kevin Feige, for allowing my mom to finally figure out what I did for a living.
Right.
But that's my point. Is I always tell people in Hollywood, you have to make comic book movies for your mother, because it's not the same audience. They don't have the suspension of disbelief that you have. Right. Where you're allowed, you can accept the Eternals and Guardians of the Galaxy and all that kind of stuff, the way they're portrayed in the comics, but you can't necessarily do that with a mass audience. They don't have that suspension of disbelief that you have.
Right. Right. In comics, really anything can happen, right? They die, they can come back 2 years later with something out of the blue, and because of comics, there's always that kind of thing.
Yeah, and
You can do
continuity.
it.
I mean, comics is just rife with just laden with continuity. Yeah,
Right.
so that's a problem. I mean, even now, Marvel's starting to get a little complicated in the films. It's like you have to watch every one of them to kind of figure out what's going on sometimes. So I mean, it's always something you got to watch. But the comic books themselves are so heavily laden with continuity that it becomes a problem because there's no place for new readers to jump on.
Right. And then I also do want to talk about Ant-Man, because during your time with Iron Man, after that, you did go on to Scott Lang and Cassie, who we are seeing on the big screens now, which is incredible.
And the Ghost. Don't forget the Ghost.
The Ghost.
Don't forget Hannah John Kamen. Oh my God, she's so awesome.
Right. Yeah, she was pretty cool as well.
She smells great.
That is a detail.
She came up to me. She came up to me at the Ant-Man and the Wasp premiere. Her agent told her I was there, and she come running up to me like in this diaphanous thing. Look, I mean, she's just beautiful. I mean, just stunning. And she comes up and gives me a big hug and thanks me for creating the Ghost. And I'm, I know it's just like one of those insane moments in my life, and I'm just like, the only thing that went through my head, I swear to you, the only thing that went through my head was, man, does she smell great? And I hadn't even seen her yet. That's the thing. I hadn't, I wasn't on the set for Iron Man and the Wasp. So I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I hadn't seen her performance yet. But she was fantastic. I didn't really care that they switched genders because it was not a gender specific character. But I thought they handled her fantastic. But what's not to love about Ant-Man? I mean, I feel bad for Edgar Wright that he kind of got the shaft on the first movie, but it's like because that was his pet project. You know that, right?
Right.
It was the only Marvel movie that was pitched to Marvel that came from the outside. It wasn't part of the original plan. But it's like, so he was pretty heartbroken when the things didn't work out.
Right.
Here's the thing that's crazy too. All the years I do cons, I do like 15 cons a year or something like that for the last 20 years or something, right? And I maybe sign 2 or 3 of those Marvel Premiere 47s, right?
Right.
I sign a couple a year or something, whatever. Movie comes out, and all of a sudden, that's thousands and thousands of these books appear out of nowhere. And I'm like, where have they been all these years? Who's supporting these books? I mean, I realized at the time Marvel sold books. I mean, they sold in the hundreds of thousands of copies. But it's like, where have they been?
No, they've been in the long boxes, just sitting there.
All of a sudden, I'm just buried with Marvel Premiere 47s, and I'm just saying, where have they come from?
I mean, hey, it must be a good break since with Iron Man, since you're probably starting to go into Iron Man comics at the time.
I think it was so funny because it's one of those things that we did it and kind of moved on. We decided to make Scott a regular character in Iron Man just to keep him alive. Hi, Guy. How you doing? Guy's one of my big Facebook followers. It's one of those things where what I tell you is you never know what's going to resonate with people.
Right.
It wasn't that Scott Lang necessarily resonated with the world, but it did with Edgar Wright. From the time that comic was one of the same thing that the Challengers was to me. Edgar read that comic and he was hooked. He loved Ant-Man so much that he pursued making the film when he became an adult.
Man, I mean that's crazy. Of all the characters, I mean, I don't want to knock Ant-Man, but I'm like, Daredevil would be cool. Who else? Ant-Man's great, and he was very fitting because he is an Avenger.
If you make the movie for your mother, it works, right?
Yes, it does. 100%.
Fans is like, who wants to be small? Right?
Right. I mean, Edgar maybe.
Well, no, but Edgar sees the power in that. He saw the power in that. He saw the potential in that. And it's, again, because it's not about premise. It's always about character. And Scott is an interesting character. There's always a hook. Spider-Man's hook. What's Spider-Man's hook? That he's a teenager pretending to be a man, and fighting crime or whatever like that. But he's
Right.
also a kind of a nerd who has a hard time getting through life, otherwise, right? You know what Tony Stark's hook is, It's obvious. So what is Ant-Man's hook? Well, Ant-Man's hook was he was a single parent. There was never in the Marvel universe was there a single parent superhero who's also a reformed criminal. So, that's the hook of the character.
Right. And they definitely did do a great job kind of displaying it. What is it like seeing all the characters that you've pursued? War Machine, Iron Man, Ant-Man, Cassie Lang, we're going to be seeing. And then Armor Wars is going to be coming out. What is it like seeing?
Yeah, I'm interested in what they're going to do with that. I haven't heard from Marvel about it at all. But I presume they haven't started shooting yet.
Right.
But I'll be interested. I'd like to go if they're shooting in Atlanta. I'd like to go up there and check it out. I think it would be fun if I'm still in the country by then, But,
right.
It's exciting for me. One, because I get royalties.
Right. Well, there's always the money. There's always the money for the film.
You love the money. Okay. So yeah, I get royalties. So that's nice. Marvel's been very generous about that. It's always exciting, and it's kept my career relevant. Again, we talk about relevancy. 45 years of doing this, and I'm on your podcast, right? Talking about stuff that's happening right now. Between that and what's happening with the Valiant universe, it's like in the cinematic universe. It's like it's been an interesting time for me. Plus, can we not talk about Birds of Prey though? Can we? Can we not talk about it?
All right, then we don't have to. This is
because let's face it, that there's a property that's probably dead for the end of time now.
Right.
I went all the way to London for the premiere of that thing, and everybody in the row I was with had fallen asleep. Bad. It's true though. I get royalties on the Huntress, and they were DC was very generous about that because I had created a creator deal on that. But it was just ghastly, the film, But then you get to go to London, right?
Right. That is a good reason to go to London, is to see a movie that is using one of your characters. But like what I was saying is, what is it like seeing, like, other than the royalties, your characters that you worked on, right, on the screen 35, 45 years later in your career?
What do you think?
It probably feels like you probably feel like the biggest badass in the world.
What do you think?
You probably
like oh ho hum. Oh.
But
the only thing that bugs me is when there's stuff that I created that I don't get credit for. Like Rusty Collins in Deadpool. I created Rusty Collins.
Right.
Jackson Geisa and I did, right? Butch Geisa and I created Rusty Collins. We don't get credit. I've never gotten a cent from Fox. It's like my lawyer's looking into it. But, it's like, but whenever, like, even on the TV shows, Roxanne Oil would show up all the time, whether it was, Iron Fist or whatever the other show was. You see Roxanne Oil, which was an Iron Man created, entity. And there's never any credit for that kind of stuff. So every so often I'll be watching something, I'll see something I created in the background there or something like that, and it's kind of weird. But you detach yourself from it, because it was that life, back then.
Right.
I have a different life now, so it's like it's all fine and good as long as I get, as long as they acknowledge, and they do a wonderful job of acknowledging me. They even did when Rhodey made an appearance in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they acknowledged me on there. So better than the old days where they used to do the Iron Man cartoon show and they actually used our stories and never credited Dave or I with they actually used the plots from the comics.
Right.
And no credit. So the ones in the 90s, it was just like that stuff would drive me crazy, but they've learned since then it's much better politics to acknowledge your creators.
Right, or else there will be a lawsuit involved, and there will be a whole bunch of other stuff. It's out of courtesy. It's also like it's courtesy to acknowledge people that created.
You really think you're going to win a lawsuit against Disney?
Probably not, but it's a good way to get your name out if you come close.
No, I'm just saying it's like, look, all I'm saying is you don't have to, because, so far, like I said, we haven't had any problems.
Right.
In the past, wherever we had a problem, we've been able to work it out, so it's fine. As long as they continue to acknowledge the people who created the things and that they give them some compensation regards that, I think it's fine, because none of us ever did it with the intention of being compensated. I mean, that cover that you have back there, the one that's history, I got paid $200 for doing that.
It's a good cover for $200,
No, I thought I was rich. The inside books, my inking rate was $28 a page. I had to ink a lot of pages to make a living to live in New York City.
Right, so, and you inked yourself. You inked your pages yourself.
I always equated it to like old football players wearing leather helmets. Those guys did it, for the love of the game.
Right.
I was just so excited that I was doing Ironman every month. It's like I didn't even think about the money, at the time or whatever. I look at it now and I'm like, I must have been crazy.
You must have been crazy to agree to do.
I must have been crazy. Oh my God, I did all that work for $20 a page. Are you kidding?
Well, would you do anything different looking back at your journey through comics with Iron Man, with Ant-Man, with the X-Men, even, which we haven't even talked about?
I think I would have been more judicious about. I think I would have fought harder for creator rights earlier on. One of the things that I did when I first started at Marvel was, since I was trained by inkers, right? Wally Wood, Dick Giordano, primarily inkers, right? It used to drive me nuts. And this was a personal victory for me. This is in the 70s. That they would list the two artists as John Buscema, artist, Joe Sinnott, inker. And I'm kind of like, well, no. Joe Sinnott is just as much of an artist as John Buscema is, or Tom Palmer and Gene Colan. These are both artists. Why don't they just credit them as artists? Why do they have to make this distinction? Because most guys don't even know what an inker is, or
a colorist, which is still great.
I know. I still think you guys think that coloring is inking, But the point of it was, it seemed like, and also the split on pages when you got pages back, the penciler got all but two. They gave us 2 pages as inker, out of a 22-page book, So I started lobbying for have the credits changed and having the page split changed, because it was unfair to guys who basically put in as much work. Because if you're a finisher, especially, and I did mostly finishes on stuff. That means working from breakdowns or layouts.
Right.
It's like, it is unfair to label me as a non-artist, because that's what, to me, it looks like. Artist, non-artist, and it's like both guys should have equal treatment. You can tell me that Terry Austin didn't have much to do with the success of the X-Men as John Byrne. It's like Tom Palmer.
Right.
You got a list, Joe Sinnott and Jack Kirby. It's like we've all seen Jack Kirby not inked by Joe Sinnott, right?
Not as good, the inkers definitely go a long way.
Because
Klaus Janson with Frank Miller.
You have to be a good artist to be a good inker.
Right.
That's just how it works. So that's my point. So I finally got Marvel to change that policy a few years into my first stint there. And you'll see that there was a point where it all changed and it became like so-and-so and so artists. Which I take as a personal victory. Well, there was no money in it, but it was like,
but it was a good little head nod.
But there was no place to sell them because nobody wanted them back then, So that's not there.
There you go. Yeah. And then X Factor as well, another great book. If you want to talk about some of the process of choosing the respected team that you work with on that book, that would be fantastic.
Well, you mean the characters or the artists?
Both. We can start with the artist Butch Geis, which I probably mispronounced. Or
no, you got it right.
Perfect. Boom.
Butch and we had a stable of like pals, guys that hung around together at Marvel. You in like a rat pack.
Right.
It was me, Paul Smith, John Romita Jr., Butch Geis, Bill Sienkiewicz, and we all kind of hung together. I lived 3 blocks from Marvel. So I became sort of the after hours crash pad.
Right.
You know, so at any given time, my living room was like a who's who of Marvel guys who could just come in and out of my place all the time. Butch was he's a good old Southern boy, Butch. You know, it's like I loved his work. He was a dear friend, and we just saw eye to eye on a lot of stuff. And no, I didn't get any input in the Bloodshot movie other than co-creating the character.
And the whole universe.
We'll get to that in a minute, okay? We'll get to that in a minute because, Butch was always great to work with. We had collaborated on a lot of various things. I was pushing him to develop his inking, which is something that most pencilers need to do because the trouble with a lot of pencilers is that they never learn how to finish their own work, and they become kind of like half an artist. I never understood that. People who would just like only learn half their craft.
Right.
And Butch had a great line. I mean, he's as good an inker as he was a penciler. And he went on, there's a period where you see that he went on and started inking other people for a little bit. Right. And it was just as a learning experience. I was so proud of him, He inked me on a bunch of stuff. The famous Thor cover that was voted in the top 100 of all time was him inking me, So it was like we had fun together. We hung out. We worked on a bunch of stuff, but X Factor was one of those things where we did it until it wasn't fun anymore.
Right. And of course, when you're not having fun with that is a great time to leave. I remember when I was talking.
Rule, Brandon, not fun, quit, because the money was never there.
Right.
So it's stop having fun, get out, and they made life on X Factor miserable for me because it was the first X book that wasn't done by the X-Men editorial office.
Right.
So they bounced every plot I ever did. They kept bouncing stuff all the time. It was deliberate, to drive me off the book, and it succeeded. Because everything was just like pulling teeth. It was miserable.
So then, why did they give you the book if they didn't want you to do it?
They didn't give me the book. I created the concept for the new series. I mean, I went and pitched it. With me and Butch doing the book. Co-plotting it and me writing it, and and him and Rubenstein, penciling and inking it. No, it was a pitch. It wasn't like they came and handed it to me. It was I pitched it to them. So, because to me, I didn't like the new X-Men. I was always a fan of the old ones. It was like old school. It's like
the First Class.
Yeah, I mean, I just liked that's the ones I grew up with. I wanted to bring them back.
Right.
So yeah, that was it basically. But like I said, it turned out to be a political nightmare. So yeah, I did 5 issues in the annual, and I walked.
Right, and then the book went to the Simonsons for a little bit, and then later Wills came in.
I have no idea.
But then you left. Didn't even.
I'm going to take your word for it. I never look at a book once I leave. If you're going to abandon a child, the last thing you want to do is see people abusing it. So not that they abused it. I'm just saying that what I think Iron Man should be, because I put it on paper.
Right.
You know what I think X Factor should be, because I put it on paper.
Right.
It's a permanent record of it. That's my opinion of what it should be. I know opinions differ. Somebody else is going to come on, and
they're going to have their story to tell.
They're going to have their take on it. In fact, it almost becomes mandatory now. I mean, the thing is, when you take over a book now, you got to just change everything, regardless of what it needs to or not. There's that kind of wholesale revamp to make it yours, right? I mean, I took characters that nobody wanted,
and you just made them 10 times
better. Or Red Wolf, or like I said, the original X-Men. People had dispensed with them. I have a fondness for like throwaway characters.
There you go. And then Scott Lang, of course, kind of plays into their Huntress as well. But those are characters you created and brought in. And then we were going to talk about Bloodshot because you later did go on to Hollywood. If you wanted to talk about the transition from comics.
Well, Josh over here I saw him. He mentioned about Bloodshot. Did I have any input? And the answer was no. Otherwise, it would have been better.
Otherwise, it would have been much better.
Oh God, I'm sorry. Did I say that?
I thought you said you had a reputation to uphold.
No, I'm just being honest. I don't think it's necessarily a very good movie. You know, I mean, it's okay. It's good popcorn fare.
It could have been much better.
It could have been way better. Yeah, I mean, the characters were very one-dimensional in my mind, and to me, I'm always about character. I mean, the reason you love Tony Stark, the reason you love Scott Lang, you know, the reason you liked the Valiant stuff was it was all about character. Character is what makes a story, and you know, I just didn't. I watched the movie, and though it's flattering and wonderful, whatever, I had no feelings for these people. You know, they had no background, no real background to speak of, no real motivations or whatever. I just felt it was kind of lip service. I mean, it's action packed. The special effects were awesome.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I didn't go to the Hollywood premiere. I went to the premiere in the Middle East because they're, you know, what they. Thank you, Skip. My former business partner, Skip Farrell, is on the air with us.
Wow.
Yeah.
There
And he's
you go.
allowed to call me Bobby besides. Well, everyone else who calls me Bobby's dead, so think about that, Skip. My mom, Dick Giordano, you know, it's like, so, well, I don't know. Ed almost still calls me Bobby. So, yeah, no, I had no input. But what I found out about the Middle East is they love Vin Diesel. Oh, my God. Vin Diesel could do anything. You know, I mean, he could dress up in a tutu and dance for 15 minutes on camera, and they'd go to see it, you know. They love him. Fast and Furious, all that stuff. Man, they're just nuts for Vin. So, I mean, he could do no wrong. I'm just saying Bloodshot was really advantageous in another way because I went to the premiere there, which was wonderful. I mean, the Sony's division over there, I think it's called Emerald Pictures, was it? Yeah. They put on quite a show. I had this big display, and everything was really fun. And I had a white Nehru suit made with a Bloodshot emblem on it. You know.
There you go.
Oh yeah, I totally went Hollywood on it.
You totally went Hollywood in the Middle East.
The next day they declared a pandemic and shut the movie theaters down. It played for one night, but the advantage that Sony had with Bloodshot was it was the only thing available for like 6 months.
Right.
Yeah, for download.
Right.
I mean, it wound up doing really, really well, online because most of the movie productions got halted.
Right.
So there was nothing left to do but watch Bloodshot over and over again, which they apparently did. I'm sure like a lot of people did enjoy. You know, Vin Diesel's a very talented actor. Yeah, Bloodshot to me, like you said, it was very transparent. Of course, like it was thin.
Yeah, I think they could have done a little bit more.
And that's the thing that the thing that really bothered me was that I would like to. I want to know more about the characters. I want to know why they're doing the things they're doing. Right. You know, again, it varied. This was a new version of Bloodshot created for the screen, not the one Kevin Van Hook and I created at Valiant.
Right.
You know, so I don't really feel any real attachment to it because it's not really the character I came up with. I mean, it's the concept, more or less. I mean, but also you got to remember, I came up with the whole idea of a nanite-powered character while nanites were just theoretical.
Right.
This was back in the early 90s, you know, where I read an article in Scientific American about nanotechnology, and then it was purely theoretical. And I thought, wow, what a great way to get superpowers without being bitten by a radioactive water buffalo, you know?
Right.
You know? And so, yeah, that's really was the genesis for the creation of Bloodshot.
There you go. And then I do like this question. What would have been the ideal movie-based character you worked on that hasn't been done?
That hasn't been done. Well, I heard rumors that that Hercules is going to make an appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've heard rumors to that effect. That would be really great. But what I want to see, probably more than anything, is Exo Manowar.
Exo Manowar. That would be.
I want if they go back to the original premise and do Conan in a can. I think it would be absolutely fantastic. You know, I always love fish out of water stories, and Arik is the biggest fish out of water ever, out of time, out of space, or whatever. And the fact that he's a barbarian set in modern, New York City, I think would be hilarious.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it has all the trappings, it's the creepy spider aliens, all that stuff.
Right. I was just thinking what they can do with like the special effects.
He has
that would
a
be
gay
really
sidekick.
cool. There
he has a gay sidekick. It's like how trendy we can get. It's Gay Pride Month here. Let's get an Exo movie going.
That would be really cool.
I loved Ken. Ken was one of my favorite characters, right? Because you cared about Ken. Ken was kind of a scumbag, but he was a lovable scumbag.
There you go. And this is my good friend Chet. He has almost every single.
Chet, what's up, man?
He has almost every single X-Men book from the Bronze Age signed by Stan Lee. So he's the biggest X-Men fan I know. And he every time a creator's on, he's always asking, "What's their favorite X-Men?" So here you go.
What's my favorite X-Men?
Yes.
Well, I don't know, because see, my problem with the X-Men, again, they defy science in a lot of ways, but probably Iceman, because he's all shiny, and I like doing shiny.
I mean, yeah, you did Iron Man. You got to work with shiny metal.
Shiny stuff, yeah, but I mean, my problem with all of them is like Angel. It's just because you give somebody wings doesn't mean he necessarily can fly. There's actual science involved with that. Okay, why does the Cyclops' eyelids blow off? I mean, there's all these things that I always wonder about, these convenient powers, right? Colossus is shiny. Yeah, I like Colossus too.
Yeah.
But we're just sticking with the ones I did. I only did one issue of the actual new X-Men. That was like issue 105, but it was bi-monthly. I couldn't make a living doing that then, so I signed a contract at DC and went over there and started doing All-Star Comics.
Iceman.
So you think his eyelids should blow off? I mean, he should have no eyelids. He should have these big giant bug eyes, and he needs the glasses because he can't keep his eyes moist or something.
I'm not a Cyclops fan, so the fact that you just ragged on Cyclops is one of my favorites.
Well, I'm just saying that a lot of mutant powers don't make any scientific sense. So that's it's all fine and good, but again, Professor X, cool power. I mean, let's face it, telepaths are always the most powerful characters you can create anyway.
Right. I thought you were gonna actually go with Marvel Girl because of you always like to put character first. I think she's the most raw character of all the X-Men, like as a person. I were yours.
It depends, but again, I don't give it a lot of thought these days.
Right. Well, speaking of what you are thinking about these days, kind of segueing into that, I know you do have a lot of current projects coming up that we were talking about kind of backstage with launching your furthering your career in the movie business. So would you like to talk about that? You can have the floor for that.
Wow. No. Well,
we got the nice backdrop.
Once I left Hollywood about 5 years ago, came back here to Florida, I started working on putting together my own production company. So and I started traveling the world, Japan and Dubai and all these places, Sweden, whatever, to start raising money to basically start my own production. The first film, my company, Box Monkey Pictures, that I'm doing with my business partner, Michelle Grant, The Helix is a film I actually wrote for Ed Olmos and his production company, like 11 years ago.
Right.
But we wound up, Eddie, it was really funny because Eddie wound up shelving the picture because I came up with an idea for a better movie. Which it never got made either. I mean, I wrote the script, but it never got made either because it was too expensive. But eventually the rights reverted back to me. So, I decided to put together my own production company and raise the financing myself so I don't have to deal with the BS in Hollywood. So The Helix will be the first in a series of films. I finally get a chance to actually make this sucker. It's an adult sci-fi movie. It deals with a lot of social issues and it's very, very character driven. I describe it as Lord of Flies in space. It's Yeah, it's a heavy philosophical film, but it's there's not going to be ray guns or dogfights in this, But I wanted to create something that has an international cast or whatever. So we're wrapping up the financing on this now. Hopefully, we'll be in production sometime in September. And like I said, part of what we're doing with Boxing Monkey Pictures is that we're donating a portion of all the proceeds that we make from the film to the Tower Cancer Research Foundation in order to help people who are suffering through or recovering from having cancer or whatever. Michelle, my partner, is a 2-time cancer survivor, and somebody,
Right.
Everybody knows somebody who has touched their lives, right? And the thing that I was always taught was that you give back what you take. So and believe me, one thing they don't do in Hollywood is give back much, So we really wanted to do something, not only just as a humanitarian because it's the right thing to do, but also the fact that I think I want to really set an example for our international partners. The fact that it's not just about making money or making movies. It's about doing something that helps the world. Like I said, it's an insidious disease, and like I said, we're really happy to be part of that. In terms of raising money for Tower.
Right.
And then, like I said, finally getting this movie made after 11 years. It's like it's a good script. It's the best thing I've ever written, without a doubt. And like I said, we do have a A-list actor, but I can't mention.
You can't talk about.
Because we haven't finalized anything. So I've learned my lesson in the past is do not count your chickens before they're hatched, because when you're dealing in Hollywood, anything can happen. So
they can cancel. Something can happen.
Well, no, but the thing is, we'll just keep our fingers crossed. We'll knock on wood and we'll say hamsa, 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 and we'll see what happens.
There you go. I'm excited for what you've been telling me about this movie. It was a comic book originally, right?
Nope.
Oh, nope. Okay, then I'll like so many other people, I'll be going into it brand new, and I'll be very excited to it.
This is just me finding another line of work.
There you go. You gotta stay busy these days.
No, I mean, look, I have fun doing the commissions for people and stuff like that, but there's absolutely nothing left for me to do in comics. I have no interest in doing a comic book. I have over 6,500 comic book credits to my name, second only to Stan Lee. All right, I have been one of the most prolific guys in the world. There's really no mountains left for me to climb.
Right.
Now, what's fun is I do the commissions. I get to do an individual page. I get to take my time now, something I never used to be able to do. I used to have to bang everything out all the time, and I was managing a company. I'd be, running Valiant and trying to get something drawn and trying to go home at night and write all night. It's like, and now, I can sit down and draw for fun.
Right.
I never allowed myself that simple pleasure of drawing for fun.
There you go. Are you still taking commissions before you travel?
Yeah, you just go to BobLayton.com. You can talk to me. That's a direct link straight to me, to my email. Right there on my website, BobLayton.com. I update it periodically. I haven't done it during the crisis because I haven't done anything.
There you go. Well,
we've all been pretty much in stasis, right?
Right.
So
we've all been kind of just sitting there.
Yeah, but like I said, I'll be updating it once we start work on the Helix.
On Helix, right? And that's something that I'm excited. Because you're here talking about, I'm excited to go see it.
Actually, you're
cool. Even the designs
to break this news. It's like
I am the first person to break. Wow,
not the first, but one of the first.
One of the first. You guys heard it. You guys probably heard it first.
We were talking about it a year and a half ago, but then the pandemic happened and all productions got halted. So, but now we're back at it. So
there you go.
And like I said, I'm grateful for everybody who's been part of it. My financial partner, my financiers, the director, everybody involved. It's like it's been a long road, but it looks like we're heading into the home stretch.
There you go. And that's awesome. Seeing everything like kind of coming together. I know COVID really hurt a lot of things for people putting.
I mean it's like during COVID, it was like tough. I couldn't go see her or anything like that. It sucked.
Right.
I mean, Not that she was cut down to her prime. I mean, she was 95, but the point of it is I was very close to my mom, and
Right. I'm
the fact that I
sorry.
couldn't go see her was really, really tough, especially when the
Right.
holidays come around, like, Christmas and Mother's Day. And stuff.
Right.
But who hasn't been affected by this, right?
Right. I mean, my dad owns a pizza restaurant, so obviously that took a big hit with all of that. It was right by the courthouse, so like you get lawyers in there every single day. They close the courthouse. There go your lawyers during their lunch break. There goes everyone during the lunch break. That this whole year and a half that we've been through this pandemic has been, it's been weird. It's been crazy, but honestly, and we've reverted to going online a lot and doing all of that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have no cons planned anytime in the near future. Until it's totally under control, there's no way in the world. Even though I'm fully immune now, I don't want to be part of a super spreader event, because I guarantee you if I go, to a con in Arkansas, people are going to wind up sick. So it's like I just don't want to be party to any kind of super spreader event. Besides, like I said, I plan on leaving for Dubai here in a few weeks to go finish up everything there. And reopening of the Speedy Comics comic shop there.
There you go.
Yeah, they moved to a new location, and so I'm going to be there with the grand opening. I think I believe John Romita Jr. and Dan Jurgens are supposed to be there too, from what I understand. So it should be a heck of a show.
That sounds like a superstar lineup.
If it pans out. I mean, they're used to me. They see me there that time. I mean, my nickname is Bobby Farouk now, because I've been there so many times.
What the Farouk?
But hey, after being locked up in this house, I would go to the pits of hell. I mean, it's like just for the change of venue.
Oh, so back to Hollywood, right? No.
Well, yeah. Good, Brandon. Yeah, that's pretty close. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. And I'm sure you're going to see a lot more Marvel Premiere 47s for you to sign.
Probably, but I'm always happy to do it. Guys, listen. Cynicism aside, I am incredibly grateful to all the followers over all the years.
Right.
And the fact that I still have that kind of fan following.
Right.
They'll remember, and they hold it in some regard. I am eternally grateful for that.
Right.
So many of my peers kind of sink into obscurity after a while, and it's like the fact that it's kept me young and rejuvenated. To say the least. So my thanks to you and all the fans out there.
No problem, man. It's an honor. You've given us a lot of great stories. Even today, you've given us a lot of great conversations about your work. You're even here talking about something that not a lot of people even know about, which is a huge honor. And you've created and done a lot of work on characters that are my favorites today because of that, because of what you've done. So I would just personally like to thank you for all of that. In my family, we've had that deal with alcoholism. So that definitely did speak to me in that essence. So, there are a lot of serious things, and then of course Hercules that also has its very niche of following. But, Hercules is a great character because of the stuff you did, and that's a lot of great work. And the fact that you're here on the show today is really cool to me. It was
thank you so much for inviting me. All right.
No problem. I was really nervous. I was really nervous. I was like, I'm gonna email him. I'm gonna see if he can do it. If he doesn't, no worries. But then you wrote me back like 4 hours later, and you said as soon as possible.
Listen,
I'm like, boom.
Ask my friend Skip if he's still on there. I still put my pants on one leg at a time. It's like, so yeah. Listen, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And please stay safe, everybody out there, until you get your shots. Please get vaccinated. If you haven't got vaccinated, get vaccinated.
Yes. Make sure you guys do get
vaccinated. My
girlfriend
lives in Japan, and they haven't even got the vaccine there yet. I haven't seen her in a year and a half, and it's like so many places in the world. As soon as we get us taken care of, we can start dealing with the rest of the world and help the rest of the world out to get rid of the thing. Because in my lifetime, my very long lifetime, I've never seen anything like this, and we don't want it to happen again.
Well,
so if you haven't been vaccinated, please go get vaccinated.
Right. And if you guys don't listen to Bob Layton, which you should, because he's Bob Layton, get vaccinated anyway, just for your own sake. So you can go out, you can go to cons, Think of it this way. more people get vaccinated, the more movies you can go see in the theater, the more
That's
cons
right.
you can
I'll
go
come back
see.
to Comic Con, so y'all get this to 70%, and I'll come do Comic Cons again.
Right, and then the more chances you will have of living the life of Tony Stark with all the money, all the women in the world.
And next year I'll bring clips from the Helix.
Exactly. Oh, so you will be back on the show next year. Thank you. All
right, guys.
You're always welcome. You're always welcome. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. The next guest.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
And I do want to, I do want to announce the next guest of Creators Corner, and that is Alex Sinclair. That will be on June 19th. He is he's the best colorist in DC Comics, and he's a returning guest from when we did stuff over on Instagram Live. So I'm super excited to sit back down with him. If you guys are catching the replay, thank you guys so much. For everyone in the live chat, big shout out to you guys for always being here, for your support. I really do appreciate it. And Bob, once again, thank you so much, sir, for being here.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, you guys.